In this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about UVs and creating UV layouts for some of our pieces. So up to now, we've been just adding simple materials and everything has been fine. The material attributes, you can see the different material types here, but when you start to get into adding texture maps or other kinds of images to your polygons, you want to define how the polygons are going to be able to show those textures or how they receive the textures. And to do that, we need to set up some UVs in many cases. Okay, there are different projection methods for textures. UV map is basically taking the polygons that you have on your objects and laying them out, unwrapping them into a flat space so that a 2D texture can be applied. So there's actually a special layout for this. So I'm going to jump over to this UV, and you can use the body paint UV edit, but because of the screen size, I've got a custom layout here, which is just the only thing different is the size, just as with the other one. And so you can see we have a 3D view. We have our objects manager down here, and then we have our UV mapping tools here, and then we have our UV layout that's going to be over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select the seat, let's say. Let's turn off our hyperNURBs. And now to actually access our polygon or our UV polygons, we want to hit this button right up here. So this is going to allow us to manipulate our polygons and our UV polygons and UV points. Now we're not going to be changing anything in here, but we are going to be laying this out. So what I want to do is go ahead and be able to select all of the polygons. So I'm going to go to UV polygons, and I want to turn off only select visible elements in this case, because I want to select everything. So I'm going to go ahead and let's select it all. So select the object, and then I want to be able to select the polygons. And you can see that these UVs are laid out in a very specific way. So we've got the bottom part of the chair and then the upper part of the chair. So depending on the object that you're working with, it may have existing UVs, it may not have any UVs, but you can see how this is now laid out flat. Okay, to be able to move any part of this, we can select the polygons over here. Okay, maybe deselect these, and we can go to move. And you can see you can move those around. So the idea is that you want to arrange your UVs within this sort of 0 to 1 space. Okay, and so we can select our polygons. Yeah, let me go back here and select these. And there are different ways of projecting. So optimal mapping is going to be sort of an automatic solution for you. So if we go ahead and apply that, you can see how it sort of breaks down all your different pieces. Now in many cases, optimal mapping will work fine for you and allow you to paint. But if you want to have more of a cohesive UV layout where you can sort of understand the texture map a little bit more, you can start to do some different projections. Okay, so there you can see there's multiple tabs here. So we can go to projection. Now you can see there are different projection types. So if you have something that is fairly flat, you can use flat or frontal projection. So I can do a flat projection, and you can see how it's actually kind of come down from here and it's filled up this entire thing. Okay, you can then go into relax UVs, and there are different types of relax. See, there's a couple in here. We can go ahead and say apply. Now right now, if we do that, you can see it relaxes everything in the center, but it leaves all the border points. That's because we have this pin border points on. We can also come in here and relax it that way. Now you can see how this extends past the square, and we don't want that. We want it to actually fit within inside. So we can use our scale and move it over. And the idea with UVs is we want it to take up as much of this square as possible without going over the edges. Okay, the more real estate inside the square that it takes up, the more pixels that are going to be dedicated to creating the detail for this. Okay, so we want it again to take up as much of this area as possible. Okay, if you want to ever re-project any of your polygons, you can go back in. Here's a frontal projection. And then if you just wanted to, let's say, relax certain parts, you could just select those, go back to relax, and apply that. And you can see how that just relaxes those areas. Okay, you can rotate these. Again, move and scale them. Now the idea is you don't want to have any overlapping UVs. So if, for instance, you have something overlapping like this, you can go in and select your UV points Okay, and you can actually move those out of the way. So select that. Okay, so just think of this as sort of unwrapping. I can select it here. Unwrapping your polygon object into more of a flat layout. Okay, and we won't go into too much depth on UVs. I just want to get the concept for you down, so you can see how we're sort of unfolding that. We could do the same thing over here. Okay, so you can sort of manually unfold things as well. So you want to take your polygons and project. So in this case, you want to make sure you have your UV polygons selected. Do a projection. You could do a shrink wrap, which you can see in this case doesn't really work. You could do a cubic map, which you can see it's projecting from this side, from this side, from this side, and then from the back. Okay, so there's a number of different projections. So if you have kind of a sphere shape, you can try spherical projection. If you have a cylinder shape, you can try cylindrical projection. So the different projections will work better for different types of models. Okay, so we can take a look at some of these different models and see some of the UVs that we've got here. So let me select, let's actually select go ahead and select the wings and take a look at the wings here. So you can see the wings have been arranged with the top and the bottom here, and then the pieces along some of the side pieces on the bottom. If you have areas of your model that are not going to receive any texture, a lot of times you can save time by not actually including those. You'll include them in the map, but you won't actually combine those, because you can see here we've got these different pieces. You can start to place those together. Like if I were to go ahead and select these polygons, I can just drag those off, okay, to separate those out. If I want to actually drop it back in, we can go to UV commands, and UV terrace will allow us to connect this where it's supposed to go. So these two polygons really should be in here, but they're floating around out here. So we can use UV terrace to drop those back in. All right. So that is the kind of idea behind working with UVs. So once you've got your UVs done for whatever pieces that you need them, and you can check some of these other pieces, then you can always go back here, and now the textures that you apply will utilize the UVs that you have on these models. Okay, so that's a quick look at working with UVs. In the next lesson, let's take a look at working with some procedural textures. So by that I just mean some textures that are created in Cinema 4D, not necessarily an external image file that we're using, but we'll look at how we can start to work with and add those. So we'll go ahead and do that next.